Alright guys, so today we're going to go over something which is gaining a lot of popularity these days, whole house audio slash multi-room audio. A lot of people, it's very confusing, complicated thing, they've never seen it before. And me, myself, I come from an audio background, I've done a lot of stuff with surround sound, but I just recently had to do this with my house and I really had no idea where to start or what it meant. It all seemed very complicated. I guess that's kind of what companies want you to make it seem like, because they're selling you these things nowadays and they're making a lot of money off them. I think people like Sonos, for instance, they got their very expensive systems. You're talking like 600 plus bucks for like a little amp thing. But in reality, this can be very cheap. I'm gonna show you guys different ways to accomplish this and ways to do it on cheap. All right, so breaking this down, basically from left to right, you have a typical flow of the components you'd need for a whole house audio system. There's a simpler way to this, I'll show you later, but pretty much what you have here is your streamer device, otherwise known as your source. So this is what you will have playing your music from. These have typical setup, 99% have an RCA output of some sort into either a controller, which basically this can be called a matrix switch. These typically have something like 4 inputs, 8 outputs, something like that. Another word for output is zone. So a zone basically means a stereo pair. So one RCA cable. And then from there, you have a typical amplifier, so your power amplifier. For every single stereo pair, you need an amplifier. And those will have, an input of RCA cable and an output of, 4 wires, so 2 for each speaker. So this controller piece, basically what this nets you is optional piece of hardware. And so what you can do is basically, say you have a 4 source, 8 zone controller. What that basically means is you can have 4 different streamers going into it, and then 8 zones outputs. And from there, you can take any of the streamers and you can assign them to any of the outputs. And on top of that, you can take one input and assign it to multiple outputs. And so what that does that's helpful is, if you want, say you have a large living room or hallway or something where you have more than 2 speakers, so you have 4 speakers, that would be 2 zones from this lingo, and you want them always to be playing in sync with each other. You can do that by basically having one input, and then the controller assign that input to both of those different zones. Another way to get around this is a lot of these streamer devices, they will say that they're multi-room compatible, and basically what that looks like is in their app is you can link them together with each other, so that whatever's playing on them is mirrored between the two of them. Okay, so if you look at it this way, not too complicated. You have to ask yourself, first off, how many speakers do I have? That would be the first question. So say you have 12 speakers, it means you need 12 channel amplifier. So each channel in the amplifier is 1 speaker. That 12 channel amplifier will take 6 RCA pairs, which is 6 zones. So you either need a controller with 6 zones of capability, or if you want to save a couple bucks, depending on what deal you find, you can completely cross this controller out of the situation. If you do that, then you can plug this streamer RCA directly into the amp RCA. And so what I said before, this controller allows you to basically mix your inputs to any outputs. By eliminating that controller, you can no longer do that. So this streamer will always only play to 1 speaker pair. And that's where, if you want that multi-room audio setup, like I said before, say 4 speakers in your hallway that you always want playing the same, then you would have to find a streamer which can handle that multi-room capability. And so you still need 2 streamers for that. Like I said, 1 streamer, only 1 RCA pair. So basically, if you want to cut that out and you had 12 speakers, you get a 12 channel power amp, and you need 6 streamers, 1 for each pair. That is option A. Option B is this route you see here, where you have a controller and you only need as many streamers as you have the desire for separate sources playing at the same time. Try to understand what I mean. say you have your 12 speakers, right? But you're only ever going to be listening like in your bathroom and your back porch at the same time. So that means only 2 zones are playing at the same time. So you only need 2 streamers if you have a situation like that. So instead of needing a streamer for each zone, you can get away with 2 because you're only going to be playing 2 different inputs at the same time ever. So where this comes into play financially speaking, where does it come to a benefit? So basically, where that comes into a benefit is if you need, if it's that situation, like I said, where you need only 2 streamers for 12 zones, it's typically going to be a better idea to get a controller because you only need to buy 2 streamers. If it's that you always want to have, you have 12 speakers, and aka 6 zones, and you want all of them playing different music at the same time, you would need 6 streamers. And in that case, you don't really need a controller anymore because you're going to have the 6 streamers anyway, which is what you need to control 12 pairs of speakers, or 12 individual speakers. Cost-wise, you guys probably heard of Sonos, right? They're charging some crazy stuff, $650 for a all-in-one speaker amp system. So basically it has 1 speaker pair, and inside of it's got its own Sonos streaming device, and it's got its app, which lets you do that multi-room, all that goodness. And that's like, say, $650, something around there for that setup. Anytime you want to add this extra zone, extra speaker pair, you need to buy another one. In this situation, these streaming things, there is a plethora of them on the market. If you go to Amazon, you can find them cheap. One of the cheapest ones is called the AudioCast. It's 35 bucks. You can find them some on sale for 20 bucks. You can find them all the way up to 100 something bucks. I'll have a video later on testing a bunch of these different streamers, and you'll see what you're paying for. Foreshadow, you're not really paying for anything. You can get the cheap ones and get away with it. This controller, you can find these used. All this stuff you can find used. The amp and the controller, this is where you save your big bucks. 12 channel amp, you can find these all day used on eBay for maybe 150 bucks, 200 bucks, or you can buy a new one for $500, $600. For amps, always recommend Class D. Some people might be their old. Class AB is the most common. The most expensive amps in the world, highest end ones, use Class D generic ice power modules in them. So there's nothing wrong with Class D. It'll save you a lot of heat, especially when you're running all these speakers at once. That's going to generate a lot of heat if you got a Class AB amp. Also, it's going to pull a lot of power. So think of that. If you have a ton of speakers, you probably have all your amps in the same location, and you might be able to max out your circuit breaker. If you have a Class D amp, you can get more power before tripping that breaker because it's more efficient. With that said, I'm going to show you guys what my setup looks like, kind of to give you an idea of what one of these more complicated systems is. Okay, so as promised, here's what my setup looks like. I have a 15U rack, rollable, and up here I have a typical Marantz AVR. You will, if you want to do anything surround sound, you will need to, in some part of your system, either stick in a AVR or a preprocessor because, like I said, these are always like stereo pair outs. Below it I have HDD 12 channel digital amp, a lync 12, so that is 12 zone, and this one has 18 inputs. I have another HDD 12 channel, and this one is an Elan D1200, which is a 12 channel by 100 watt. And these, like I said, you can get this stuff used cheap. This HDD, they sell like the whole complete system if you want to go like the lazy route and just buy it all ready to hook up. And this I think new costs somewhere like 2,000 something. I got it for 300, so basically 100 bucks each, but it was a package deal. I don't actually need 36 channels of power. I'm only using 20. And this I got off eBay for I think $160. I think new this was close to $3,000 new. So these are all like very high-end gear, which you can get cheap. That's the thing I love about amps, and that's why you can save a lot of money on amps, is because the technology in amps doesn't really go anywhere with time. It's very slow. So even old gear is very, very good these days, to a certain age, that is. Going around back, we can look. all these wires. I'll clean this up eventually. So on here I have, hopefully this is bright enough for you. Here, actually, let me pop a flashlight to make this a little better. Bear with me. So on the back side, these are my RCA inputs. I have a number of streamers, and then on the right side, these are all the outputs going to the amp. Like you can say, each zone is a pair of speakers, stereo pair. Pretty much all of these, either these controllers or sometimes these amps, they'll have the option to either do them as a stereo pair or make them both mono. Which, depending on your situation, you would want to do them as mono. And some of my streamers I'm using right now, I'm testing them out. I'll have a video later showing the results of my tests. But this one is a AudioCast. Why doesn't that want to focus? AudioCast M5. It's about 35 bucks. This is a Muso Cobblestone. I think they normally go for like 50, 60 bucks. I think they're closing them out right now, so I got it for 20. This is the most expensive one. I think it's like 160 bucks. It's a Nixon Tunecast 3 or something, and it's supposed to have, I don't know why unfocused there. It's supposed to have like super duper 384 kilobyte DAC. And here I got a Bluetooth one, which is the Mi B06 Pro. So yeah, like I said, they typically they're 3.5 millimeter into RCA on your input, and then there's your outputs. You can either do fixed or variable. You see right now I'm using all fixed. Variable, fixed means basically it's a pass-through, so the volume in goes out there. This controller doesn't do any sort of, doesn't touch the signal at all, basically. Whereas the variable, you can adjust the volume inside of the thing's app itself. And speaking of apps, let me show you what it looked like. I got an Android phone. Let me pull up the Lync app. So this is what their app looks like. Like I said, it's a 12-zone system, so you have your 12 different zones. You can name them, etc., etc. If you want to use the volume, there's the volume control. I am using fixed outputs, so I'm not controlling volume here. On the right is the input. So like I said, you can matrix any of your inputs to any of your outputs. So here's some of mine. The AudioCast, the TV is the Bluetooth one, and the Muso is the Cobblestone, and then the next some Tunecast 3. And like you see, I can have the same input assigned multiple times, no problem. And this also, you can turn them on and off from here. So that's option that you can do for controller. You can go through here and mix them like that. Another option, since I'm doing the fixed, I'm controlling my volume through the actual apps of the streamer, or as you can see, I'm using casting. So if I go here to playback devices, since I'm Android, I don't have AirPlay. If you had Apple, you would want to use AirPlay, but I'm using this Hi-Fi Cast, and it is DLNA. It's very good. And so here you would select which is your input source. Say this to Tune 3. Let's just play a random song. And as you can see, it's streaming. I don't have any of the zones turned on, so you don't hear it. But then I would simply, I can adjust the volume of my system with the volume buttons on the phone. It's very convenient. Easy way to do it. If you're doing the setup where you had, one streamer per zone, you'd simply, in your streamer, or in your little devices, you would name them something smart, like zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let me bring up this AudioCast. And this is what basically all these Amazon ones, they all use the same underlying software, which is nice because you can pair them all together. So right now I have them all paired to each other. So if you want to do multi-room, like I said, you need something that supports this. So right now they all would play the same signal across all of them, and you can control them here if you want. They have all these different sources as well built in with the app if you want iHeartRadio, Pandora, all this other crap. So you get some capabilities from the actual streaming device itself, or you can, like I showed, use a casting device as the source, so you can cast to it. People with Apple will have a much better time because AirPlay, you know, you can just do any output easily. But like I said, Android is DLNA. And that's basically what it would look like. Not too hard at the end of the day. This is the way I have it set up. It's very easy to use. I like it a lot. I have the more complicated system with the controller, but that's only because I paid only $100 for it. Hope you guys this was very helpful for you. If you have some questions, feel free to ask me. I can answer them as best as I can. And have a good day.